you're never going to get something perfect for your client, hence the term compromise. And when you do a mediation as a lawyer, we purposely put each side in different rooms for a reason.
Yes.
You give a little here, you give a little there, you get a deal done, and it's not perfect. These little reporters need to get that.
And yes, just to be clear, I do agree with Trump here. I agree. I even probably agree with the characterization of Zelensky as a dictator. I don't think Trump calling people dictators and then tweeting out things about him being the king of New York is a great idea.
Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 58, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is February 20th, 2025. My name is Phil Silberman, owner of the firm and your host. And I'm joined by Austin Black, who works in our Dallas office. How are you doing today, Mr. Black?
I am doing well, doing very well. I'm liking that we're finally getting some weather that is appropriate for wintertime here. It felt like -1 degree Fahrenheit yesterday, and I was so happy I actually had to put on a coat to go out.
That's like below normal temps. Very cold. Okay, yes. So that's not even normal winter. That's like cold winter. But you're weird like that. So yes, it's very cold in Texas, people. But let's move on with some hot topics, okay?
Okay.
What do we have on our docket today, Mr. Black?
So first on our docket, in our legal news section, we're going to be talking about how the Texas lottery is facing fraud allegations. We'll get into that. I don't think it's a huge news story. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that, but so hopefully it'll be interesting to our listeners. And then we will be discussing the potential liability of electric companies for damage resulting from the system going down or the grid going down in the 2021 Texas winter storm. And then moving on to our legal questions section, we'll be talking about first, what are spousal homestead rights in Texas? What are those rights? Do you have the right to live in the property that you were living in with your spouse if they pass away and they have children from another marriage? What exactly does that look like? We'll let you know. And then how to deed property out of an estate in Texas after someone dies. Can you just go sign a deed, signing on behalf of your late mother to sell the property to someone without doing anything in the courts? No, don't do that. We'll let you know what you should do, okay? Then we're moving on to our rant and rave section. And for people who are fatigued by Trump, we do apologize, but unfortunately, he is the president, or fortunately, if you are on that side of things, and he does a lot of stuff that is not the smartest and stuff that is news. And even if there is some media exhaustion as a result of his actions, we do have to talk about it because he's important right now. We'll be discussing whether Trump really believes that Ukraine started the war in Russia, or if, as many of his supporters think, he is playing 20D chess and is just 5 steps ahead of everyone, just acting like he's an idiot to troll the libs. Okay. I may have shown my hand a little bit there.
I think you've insulted Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Donald Trump and all of his followers, because Dan Patrick is very upset about this lottery stuff. And we got to talk about that. We're going to talk about it all. But let's go ahead and get it kicked off with our legal news section.
Okay, great.
And the first thing we're talking about is this lottery case. And it doesn't sound like a lot about it. Let me break it down for you.
Okay.
All right. So you've got $83 million winning lottery ticket sold at this place up at Austin, North Austin. It's called Winner's Corner. All right. That's
appropriate, right? The winning ticket was sold.
If you had a store and you were selling lottery tickets, you would not want to call it Loser's Lane. Okay.
No, that would not be good.
Winner's Corner. Now, the way this works is the law says, Austin, that if you're going to sell lottery tickets, if you're going to be a retail seller of lottery tickets, you have to sell other things as well.
Okay.
Because the idea was we want to sell lottery tickets to people at convenience stores,
Okay.
I guess, like a stop and go or something like that.
Is there a requirement that it's alcohol that they sell too?
No, they can sell, just have to sell something else. I don't know why it is. This store, Winner's Corner, it sells things like Monopoly games.
Interesting. I just feel like a fifth of tequila goes really well with a lottery ticket.
It does, but that's the law.
Okay.
Let's talk about some lottery stuff in general. Where does all the money go for Texas lottery? It's a very good cause, Austin. Where are we sending it?
It goes to the amorphous thing of education and veterans is where it goes.
Yes. I don't know how much of it goes there. There's a lot of dispute about what good it does and where the money goes. So Austin's cynicism.
I know it's not going to the VA, so that's someone.
All right. You also cannot buy lotto tickets with credit cards or food stamps.
Good? I think
definitely food stamps.
Definitely food stamps. Credit card makes a little less sense to me, but definitely food stamp.
The idea is, I personally believe the lottery is a tax on the poor. Okay.
Agreed.
Mostly poor people going out to buy lottery tickets they really can't afford. And the counterpoint to that is it gives everyone a chance to dream. Okay. So a little bit of dreaming is a good thing. But anyway.
Side note of that, do you see the RFK is attempting to remove the usage of food stamps for things that he qualifies as junk food, right? The left is very up in arms about that. They're like, you don't want poor people to enjoy anything in life. I'm like, what? Isn't it better for them if they don't drink Capri Suns? I don't know.
I want everybody to be as miserable as me on my diet. Okay, no Capri Suns, no processed foods, no goldfish, no Doritos, whatever it is in the center aisles of the grocery store.
I think RFK might be right on the same pathway. We'll see. But anyways, yes, lottery.
Okay. Apparently it is completely legal. It's okay to play with a group.
Okay.
So you and I can form a group. We can pool our money together and we can buy lottery tickets. Now, only one person can claim the ticket.
Okay.
But the recommendation, and this was actually, I think, on the lottery website, is you should have a written agreement contract with people that you're playing within the group. So
interesting.
If we do have winnings, it's recommended, Austin, you and I have a contract, says what happens, who collects the ticket, that kind of stuff.
Got it.
So,
okay.
All right. Now, here's what everybody is upset about, or especially Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is upset about with this last winning, the $83.5 million, is this thing called a lottery courier.
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
I don't know what a lottery courier is. I see it in our show notes, but before this, I did not know what that was. No.
I did not know what it is either. It's just a place where you go online and you can buy tickets instead of going to the convenience store.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how they get around this, because I think the idea was that you were supposed to buy locally in Texas. So they're probably doing these things to technically comply with the law. Nobody disputes that lottery couriers are completely legal in Texas, except Dan Patrick.
Yeah, Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick, the bastion of what is legal and right in Texas. Yes.
Well, he's mad about it. He says he's investigating the legality of lottery couriers. I don't think that's a dispute. Since 2019, they've been completely legal. He did try to make them illegal in this session, and it passed in the Senate but died in the House. I think he knows everything about this, and they're legal. What's the loophole here? I guess if you're a wealthy person or you want to play the odds, you can use a lottery courier to more conveniently buy online. I suspect it's a little bit inconvenient for me to go down to my local grocery store and write them a check for, or bring
your local winner's corner,
my winner's corner, and bring them $30 million in cash. I think
that is typically difficult to move around $30 million in cash. Yes, I've heard.
I mean, I just don't think it's going to go well when I go into the store and I ask the clerk for his wire transfer instructions. And I think logistically, that's probably one of the biggest prohibitions between a group getting together or one person getting together and buying $30, $40, $50 million worth of ticket. The convenience store doesn't take the wire transfer. I assume these lottery couriers do, in fact, take wire transfers.
Yep, I agree.
Have you ever been to an event where there's a raffle?
Yes, I have.
Okay, you can actually just ruin the raffle if you do rough statistical math and you know that there's 100 people at the raffle, 200 people at the raffle. They've got a $10,000 prize. Tickets are X number of dollars. You can get, statistically probable, if the risk reward is right, you can get up to a 90% chance of winning on a gift that if that raffle ticket costs you, 100 people are at an event. Let's say 100 people are going to buy a raffle ticket, right? $1 a ticket, $100. You buy $90 of it. You have a 90% chance of winning. Let's say the prize is worth $1,000. You've just risked $90 at the odds of winning to win $1,000 at 90% odds. Okay, that's a good play.
Yeah.
So
It is.
similar stuff is going on here. Dan Patrick does not like it. So anyway,
I'm glad that I don't live my life based on what Dan Patrick likes or does not like. I think it'd be a very sad life, to be honest.
Do you like it? Do you like lottery couriers? Do you think
I don't
after hearing
care.
it?
I don't care. I wish Dan Patrick was making a better use of his time than trying to fight lottery couriers, to be honest.
In my opinion, I think Dan Patrick is basically trying to tax the poor more, so to speak.
I'm sure he is. He looks exactly like the kind of person who would want to tax the poor. That is Dan Patrick.
You're being facetious, but here's how I think about it. If you have sophisticated players step into the lottery, then all of a sudden you've got more payouts versus let's keep all the sophisticated players out. Patrick only wants poor people to go up to the local gas station or convenience store out of the ghettos all throughout Texas, buy their food stamps, buy their lottery tickets, buy their 6-packs, and then have a very low probability of winning, get all that revenue. So I think it is a scheme and tax against the poor, and Dan Patrick doesn't like it. But
interestingly enough, though, lottery is really popular in Korea too. Very popular.
Is that right?
In Korea.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah. And it's good, like actually where the sale proceeds for lottery tickets in Korea, they go to provide financial assistance for low-income groups like single mothers, people with disabilities, ex-convicts with housing, job training, scholarships for like other social safety nets. So it's good.
Look, our lottery is benefiting veterans and education. Is that not good?
How do we see that?
Well, how do you know theirs just is not equally abusive and corrupt, right? So,
like I've seen how they actually manage that stuff, and it's a little bit more like things you could actually see happening. Yeah.
There's an ancillary lawsuit we need to talk about real quick, and they're related and not related. They're related in the sense they're both about the lottery.
Okay.
But there was a $95 million winning ticket where it was exactly like we were talking about. Of rich, sophisticated players got together, bought all the tickets, won the $95 million jackpot, and that created some disputes. And then also somehow our Texas Lottery Commissioner, which his name is Gary Grief, I think that's his name. I mean, that Grief, is that how you would pronounce that?
That is how I would or Gref. I don't know. That's probably how I'd pronounce it as grief, but I don't know. So
that's a very unfortunate name, but he is suffering a lot of grief right now because he's being sued. There's this watchdog group that's suing him, and they're alleging this international violation, these violation of international laws and lottery laws and selling across state lines. I don't fully understand it, except to say that he flew to California. Maybe we have these bits and pieces of facts of information, and tried to get this one company over there to sell tickets over here or something like that. But we do know that he's being sued related to alleged fraud in our lotto system, and that's shaking the confidence of the people.
Interesting.
So
yeah, I'm sure the people pay attention to these lawsuits, the people that buy tickets. Yeah.
I think they're just going up, and as you correctly point out, they're just going to buy the tickets.
Grief, I actually think would be a really good last name for a lawyer, though, right? Like, I will give the other side grief. Give the people you hate grief. I'll do it.
Or just the profession I chose is so miserable. My name reflects. My name is Grief. Right?
Yeah.
Some people really. Do you like being a lawyer, Austin?
I like being a lawyer. I think most days I like being a lawyer. I think it fluctuates, right?
So a lot of lawyers do not like being lawyers. There that is. But that's another rant and rave section. Okay, we got to move on to our next news topic, legal topic.
Yeah,
do you remember the winter storm?
Let's not get frozen on one thing, right?
That's a good. You have the best dad jokes for not having any children. So, you remember the winter storm of 2021?
Well, I wasn't here during it. I got back right after it, but yes.
Okay, we had this freezing storm. We lost power. We completely mismanaged our electrical grid. Did you know that Texas is the only state that's not on a federal grid system? So
Yes,
everything.
I did know that. Yeah.
You did know that? Okay. So we manage our own grid.
So
Yes, we completely mismanaged it. And people died. It wasn't funny. People died. And I was at home. I did not have a generator.
Yeah.
We built tents around my gas fireplaces, my inserts, and I was paranoid about carbon monoxide poisoning. So I went up to Home Depot, I bought carbon monoxide detectors. I put the carbon monoxide detectors in these tents, these makeshift tents and that's how we stayed warm with the gas fireplaces. If we didn't have that, we could have died. The roads were frozen over. It was bad. So some enterprising lawyers, who I guess this has been certified as a class, are suing the electricity companies, saying that they're liable for gross negligence and intentional nuisance law in Texas. Okay.
So have you seen that picture where they have two pickup trucks backed against each other with their tailgates down, and they've put a blanket over both of them, but over the side of a tent over both the trucks, and they're like, this is a really good tailgating idea. And then the comment is, yeah, and you can leave them both running for warmth, right? You're gonna go to sleep for a long time. You're talking about carbon monoxide.
Is that a joke? It's obviously a joke.
No, it's obviously a joke. It's like, that's not a good idea.
No, that's just crazy. But anyway, so back to this winter storm stuff. They're suing the electric companies, gross negligence. So gross negligence is like negligence, right? You've got a duty.
But it's gross.
Yes, it's very gross. You've got a duty, regular negligence. You've got a duty to somebody. You breach that duty. You were the proximate cause of that breach. And then you've got damages. And now you take gross negligence and you're going to add on 2 additional elements. So those elements that we add on for gross negligence are, one, that the action involved an extreme degree of risk and the defendant knew of the risk involved, but acted with conscious indifference to the right, safety, and the welfare of others. That's the 2 additional.
Or absolutely should have known of that risk.
Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely should have. So that's the additional standard for gross negligence. I suspect we're arguing here the electric companies knew the dangers when they were shutting all of these, doing these rolling blackouts and shutting everything off.
If anyone should have known, it should have been the electric companies. Yes. So,
right. I mean, their defense is we were just following the directions of ERCOT. So whether that
ERCOT, who is exempt from liability.
We don't have ERCOT in this lawsuit. I'm guessing that's because they're exempt from liability.
They would be exempt on the issue of sovereign immunity.
Sovereign immunity. Yeah, that's probably what's going on here. So maybe, who knows? I do know this. I think they were hoping for a jury trial. The plaintiffs were hoping for a jury trial. I think somehow they said no jury trials.
Interesting.
So, and could you imagine trying to get a fair jury in the state of Texas for that case? That's probably their argument, right?
Yeah,
how could we ever have a fair jury trial, Your Honor?
I think it's a bit of I get it, but I also think that's a sort of a bad faith argument. If you've done something so egregious that has hurt the people of a community, of the entire community, right, that there's no way that they're going to be unbiased on it, then I feel like, yes, you absolutely should be in front of a jury because they're going to make the right decision. I don't know. Because you could make the same argument about a judge, because the judges are going to be as affected as everyone else in the community, right?
Your hope is the judge is going to act a little bit more impartially.
I don't ascribe to that theory of jurisprudence. I'm not a big student of Blackstone there.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, and then the other we have here, they're claiming, and this is intentional nuisance. What are the elements of intentional nuisance?
So intentional nuisance in Texas, there needs to be intent. The defendant needed to intend to interfere with the plaintiff's use of their property. There needs to be knowledge. The defendant knew that the interference was likely to occur, and then that interference has to be unreasonable.
I don't mind that tort so much. They intentionally shut the power off, so they interfered with my use of my property. I was freezing almost to death. Right?
Yeah.
They had knowledge of it. They knew, they were doing it, and it was unreasonable. I don't. Is it unreasonable? What were they going to do? They only had so much power to spread around, right? That's just what they were doing. I think they're going to have to win this case on summary judgment. The electric companies are going to have to win this on summary judgment. We'll see how that comes out. I think it's up at the Texas Supreme Court right now.
Yeah.
That brings us to our legal questions section. And the first thing we're talking about is spousal homestead rights. We had this come up in a space where all of our attorneys do collaboration at the firm. And the real central question was, if a spouse has a life estate, can the children from the deceased spouse just show up and start living with her, right? I have to unpack this in a legal way. Just the idea sounded absurd to me, but that's what was going on in the chat. But do you know much about spousal homestead, Austin? Or?
I know a little bit. I haven't had many clients where that actually was an issue with them. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just tell you a little bit about what is really happening here.
Okay.
In Texas, we want to ensure that the spouse, that the living spouse after, let's just use traditional terms, man dies first, husband dies first.
Okay.
You've got wife who survives, and we want to ensure that wife always has the ability to live in the homestead.
Okay.
Now, we're just gonna assume that husband had no will, and that husband in this situation was married previously, had children from another marriage, and then gets married to new spouse.
Yep.
They buy a home together, so that home is community property.
Yes.
And we know then that the surviving spouse only owns half of it.
Correct.
After it, the other half goes to the deceased spouse's children, her husband's children, which some of the children could be her children.
Yep.
Some of the children are from another woman.
Mm-hmm.
And the question there is, now she only owns half of it. Can the children from the previous relationship just show up, knock on the door, and say, hey, give me a room upstairs. I own half, right?
Yeah.
And that's ludicrous. The answer is no.
Okay.
But the reason it's no is because we have this thing called a spousal homestead right in Texas, which actually originates from the Texas Constitution, but has later been codified.
Okay.
Do you have that code section?
It's code section 102.005 of what section of the code is that?
That's in the Estates Code.
The Estates Code, titled Prohibitions on Partition of Homestead, which says the homestead may not be partitioned among the decedents, the person who died, heirs, during the lifetime of the surviving spouse for as long as the surviving spouse elects to use or occupy the property as a homestead.
Yeah. Now that simply says you can't partition it, meaning the children who own the house with their surviving spouse can't force a sale.
Sure.
And that's out of the estate. And that the original concept that really comes from the Texas Constitution.
Sure.
And we've got a court case. Do you have that case there at the
it's
bottom?
Sparks v. Robertson, which was in the appeals court in Austin. The judge in that case said that in this state, the homestead interest of each spouse or the surviving spouse in the homestead property constitutes an estate inside of it, which is treated as a life estate. So that as long as the property is treated as a homestead, the surviving spouse can live there and has the ability to use it as they want to.
Yeah. And that's that court, that appellate court interpreting the Texas Constitution in 1947.
Which other courts have followed in Texas. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And the key there, Austin, is if you think about this as a life estate, take the spousal stuff out of it. If I grant you a life estate, to a property, I just, deed it over to you, you get the exclusive, I want to be clear that you get the exclusive use, just because that life
overrides other people's remainder interest in it, yes. Yeah.
Yes. So you're going to have remaindermen as part of that, meaning after the property is yours during your life, and then after you die, it goes to the remaindermen. The remaindermen don't get to come in.
And you, of course, can't do things to hurt the remainder interest, right? If you do, then they could potentially have an action against you. But they can't come in and use the property in the same way you are. Yeah.
I think we have the law understood on that. I think from a practical standpoint, the way I answered the question in the chat room was, if I've got a bunch of kids from different babies' mamas, everybody knows my wife, they know Catherine, and all of a sudden I die and I don't have a will, can all the children from my different babies' mamas show up and live with Catherine? And then when I asked the question like that, they were like, "Oh, that's stupid, right?"
Yeah,
So,
no, they cannot. Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes you have to break it down like that for people to get it, because the spousal life estate stuff and states code stuff, it does get confusing. It does get a little complicated. All right, next question is a lot easier. What's our next question, Austin?
Yeah, so how to deed a property out of an estate after someone in Texas dies.
Yeah.
Very easy question to answer. You need a deed signed by the executor of the estate. So you need to probate it. It needs to go through the probate court. You need to have someone appointed as the executor, whether that's named in a will or not named in a will. They need to be appointed as the executor. And then at that point, they can deed the property to someone who is designated as a beneficiary in the will. Or if, let's say, there was a contract to sell the property and the person died in the process of it, they could deed it to the person who was purchasing the property too. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Let me back up for a second. That's exactly right. But let me back up and give a little context, because I think a lot of people get confused on this, because they think that if they're left property in a will, then it just automatically
upon death, transfer. Yes.
Which it actually does. It does it. There's no public notice of it.
No notice.
So even though it's happening in the probate court and it is this automatic thing, without notice of it in the public records, there's no real practical effect.
Do we want to talk about race notice race?
No, we're not doing. Please, no. We're keeping this simple.
We're not going to make this a quick bar review section.
Yeah. No, and Austin was not talking about racial tensions or relations. He was talking about a different kind of race notice. But we're just talking about, you need to put it in the public records. That's the county clerk in Texas. That's different than the probate court records. There's specific records for that, and that's why it's so important to have a deed. You could get a certified copy of the will and record the will, but the will may not actually specifically enumerate the property with a legal description, so you're also not going to have notice there.
Yeah, even judicial orders don't frequently do that. So
if any of our attorneys draft the order, then they better.
They should, yes, but frequently judicial orders do not even have the legal description, like in divorce decrees.
Yes, so, same thing. Austin is right. All right, that brings us to my favorite part of the show. That's our rant and rave section. Okay. This one has been getting me fired up. It's this whole Ukraine.
Me too, but maybe on a different sides.
I'll frame the question of really what's going on, and then you give the listeners your take, because I think you do. We talked about this before the show started. I do think you have a unique take on it. But all right, so Trump is just getting lambasted in the media right now, because he said that Ukraine has started the recent Ukraine-Russia war. All right, and what happened was Trump takes office. He wants to end the war. He immediately calls Putin. The two countries schedule a meeting together, not with Trump, not with Putin, but with the Russian higher-ups and our higher-ups. Marco Rubio was there, so my mind was at ease immediately. But anyway, so we had this meeting, and then Trump's at home, and he starts tweeting or Xing, and he starts talking in the media, basically says Zelensky, who's the leader of Ukraine, it was an average, mildly successful comedian and is now a dictator and hasn't been duly elected. Term did end in May of 2024, but under martial law, Ukrainians are not going to have another election. And everyone's like just beating Trump up. What are you talking about? The Russians started the war. And this is all bad stuff for ending the war. All right, Austin, what's your take on it before I tell everyone I'm mad about?
My take is the take of most people who are foreign policy analysts, like in think tanks, etc., which is that Ukraine historically has always been seen both by the West and Russia as a buffer zone between UN-controlled countries, countries in the UN, in NATO, not same thing, but a lot of overlap there, and Russia. And Russia, because its interests don't always usually align with the UN, they've wanted that buffer zone, and all countries have treated Ukraine as such. And in Ukraine, for all of its glazing by the media in recent years, is extremely corrupt. has an extremely corrupt system. There's a reason why Ukraine has not been admitted into the UN. It's not
not disputable.
Not
Ross
disputable.
is right. They're corrupt. Yeah,
they're extremely corrupt, and I don't. Trump. Most people know that Trump's words are not his strongest suit. Right? I don't think he's intelligent at all. I do not think he's playing 20D chess like his supporters do. I think he's tweeting stupid things. He does not have any tact whatsoever. But and I agree that no, Ukraine didn't attack Russia. Okay, no, in that way, no, Ukraine did not start this war at all. Right? But I believe that the West, more Western countries than Ukraine, are responsible for this current war. Because Russia has been extremely clear over the years, stating that if Ukraine is allowed to join the UN, then that will be seen as a threat to Russia, and they will invade Ukraine. That has been explicit for a long time.
So you're basically arguing that Russia set its terms.
Russia set its terms, and we stepped around the line for a long time. Kept providing Ukraine with, you fix these small, big corruption things in your government, we'll let you in. Yes, all that. And when we kept providing all these things, when I say we, the West, to Ukraine and giving it pathways and not saying, no, you're just not getting into the UN because of these issues that you've never fixed, Russia's, okay, well, we're going to, you keep like playing the little siblings you right in the back seat of the car. Like John's touching me. Oh no, I'm not touching you. My finger's right next to your forehead, but I'm not touching you. We kept doing that with Russia, and then eventually they punched back. And
okay, but you don't dispute that under the literal definition that Russia rolled tanks in.
Russia absolutely invaded Ukraine. I'm just saying anyone surprised by that does not follow foreign policy at all. So
and let me give you some kind of facts about this war. All right. $174 billion we've spent on Ukraine.
Yep.
All right. Russia's lost 850,000 soldiers. They've died. Ukraine, maybe about 50,000. Those numbers are highly debatable.
Yep.
Both Ukraine and Russia, they do not officially list casualties.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little more practical about this. I really do see your points. And I think this is the difference between the fancy University of Texas Law School education you have and the University of Houston Law School, the education that I have. And I boil this down to 2 or 3 things. The Russians have nukes, and we're tired of spending money, okay? And Trump is trying to do everything to end this war. Your comment on Trump being intelligent or not, I don't think he's the most intelligent guy in the world. I don't know that it matters. If I had to put IQs out there, Trump is probably one of those guys that has a 110 to 120 IQ, much smarter than the average population.
I think he has very smart people in his cabinet. I do think he has very smart people in his cabinet, and I wish he would listen to them more.
Okay, good. Trump is willing to get things done in a way that I think other people are unwilling to get things done.
Sure.
I think what Trump is doing, this isn't 4D chess or 5D chess or whatever this is. This is just Trump saying, I've got to butter up the Russians a little bit.
Sure.
And we're going to go do a meeting with the Russians, and Ukraine's not going to be there, and Europe's not going to be there.
Yeah.
Because we don't need them.
No.
Ukraine can't pursue or prosecute or wage this war without our weapons and without our money. So we don't need them at the table. And by the way, the Europeans, while they're complaining so much about Ukraine being a buffer and all that, they have spent a fraction of what we've spent. So we don't need them.
Yeah.
So Trump's trying to get this thing done, and he's got to butter up the Russians a little bit, let them save face. The Russians what do the Russians want? They want a little bit of land that they've captured. Ukraine is a big place. To me, to an American taxpayer, who cares? All right, let the Russians take a little bit of the land. Now, there's all these very smart people in Trump's cabinet probably saying, you're going to set precedent around the world, and it's a dangerous international precedent if you say that countries can wage war every time they want to take a little bit of land, and we're not going to do anything about it. We have to be practical about this, okay? Yeah. And Russia is a big nuclear power. Putin absolutely is a war criminal. The guy is terrible, but he has nukes, and he's not going anywhere. And sometimes you just have to deal with the
Yeah.
reality
all
of the
the
world.
puff pieces from the New York Times, BBC, etc., about these strong Ukrainian fighters, the David versus Goliath. Okay, look, Goliath did not have a nuke that he was holding behind his back, and he's look, David, if you keep throwing rocks at me, I'm going to nuke you. Okay,
Yeah.
right? Like we don't want to do that. We don't want that to happen.
I think that's really my rant on
Yeah.
this thing. These stupid liberal reporters
Yes.
that are just latching on to this idea. Trump is not that stupid. He knows that literally that's why I think your argument sides with Trump.
Oh.
He knows that literally the Russians started the war, but this is the reality.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get this thing to end. And just like when we do deals, okay, as lawyers, Austin, or when we mediate cases, you're never going to get something perfect for your client, and the other side's not going to get anything perfect. Hence the term compromise. And when you do a mediation as a lawyer, we purposely put each side in different rooms for a reason.
Yes.
And I'm not a big fan of really ever getting them in the same room, because especially if it's contentious, because it always devolves.
Agreed.
And you put them in separate rooms, you give a little here, you give a little there, you get a deal done, and it's not perfect. And these liberal reporters need to get that. Now they may get that, and they're just doing what they see to be their job of constantly attacking Trump. But that's the way it is. All right.
And yes, just to be clear, I do agree with Trump here. I agree. I even probably agree with the characterization of Zelensky as a dictator. I don't think Trump calling people dictators and then tweeting out things about him being the king of New York is a great idea, and might be a little bit hypocritical. But as Zelensky said, he said, yeah, the Ukrainians, they don't want elections without presenting any evidence of this whatsoever. They don't want elections anymore. They just want me to be president forever. Okay, Zelensky, chill.
Yeah, no, they point well taken, and poor taste on Trump's part for tweeting out about the thing about being a king. That was related to a whole nother traffic congestion issue, completely unrelated to Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
But anyway, that brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Austin Black has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice. This has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com. That's SILB, like boy, lawfirm.com. Let us know you want your question answered publicly in the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week and have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Bye.